Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're going to have a look at a few trig function graphs of sine, cosine and tan. So basically if we look at the sine graph, it goes something like this. It's sort of a periodic graph and it just repeats itself in that fashion. And it generally starts at 0 and it has an amplitude of 1. And it has the bottom at -1. Now we know this from the unit circle because the unit circle is a radius of 1. So because our sine functions come from the unit circle, when we graph them, they basically periodic graphs and they repeat themselves. So at here, sine is at its peak, which is at pi on 2 radians that we saw from the unit circle. And down over here, sine is 0, which comes at pi. Over here, the second trough, we've got 3 pi on 2, and then we get back to 0 at 2 pi. So this is what we call the period, right? So sine graph has a period of 2 pi. So it repeats itself So basically, if you had to plot the entire graph, it would look like this, just repeating itself 2 pi radians. Let's have a look at the cosine function. So with cosine, it also has a period of 2 pi, but basically it starts like this and then it goes like that. And it starts at its peak at 0. And over here, it's got its other trough at pi. And then it comes back to its peak at 2 pi. So once again, cosine also has a period of 2 pi. It's got its amplitude at 1 and -1, and it will be 0 at pi on 2, because as we know, cosine of 90 is 0, right? So 3 pi on 2, it's also 0. And if you were to plot that, you basically have a periodic function that would just repeat itself like this. Let's have a look at the tan function. Now the tan function is quite different when it comes to sine and cosine. So when it comes to the tan function, it actually looks quite different because remember, tan is sine over cos. So what we actually have is a function that sort of has an asymptote at pi on 2, right? So this is pi over 2, and it has this asymptote because this is positive infinity or negative infinity. And tan actually has a period of pi. It will repeat itself every pi radians. And once again, at 3 pi on 2, we have an asymptote, right? So it's approaching positive infinity and negative infinity. So the reason why tan is so different is because tan is sine over cos. So if you think about why it's so undefined at pi on 2, we'll think about what sine of pi on 2 is. Pi on 2 is 90, sine of 90 is 1, but cosine of 90 is 0. And if you try and do 1 over 0 in your calculator, it will give you an error, or it will say undefined. So that's sort of how it works with tan. It's got a period of pi, and it repeats itself every pi radians. So that's sort of a brief intro to graphs of sine, cos, and tan, and I'll see you in the next video.